Hi, I'm Jeff Hirota, CEO of Community Foundation Boulder County. I'm speaking with Carmen Ramirez, who we're very proud to say is former chair of the board of the Community Foundation, and she is also Community and Neighborhood Resources Manager for the City of Longmont and many, many, many more things in our community. You will hear the name of Carmen Ramirez in many ways if you are working in Boulder County. Talking about who we are in Boulder County, Carmen, according to the Trends Report, Boulder County is actually more diverse than we might perceive or say. 78% of Boulder County residents are non-Hispanic white, and 80% of Latinx Coloradans were born right here in Colorado. So, from your perspective, what do you think is the essential challenge about diversity and inclusiveness in Boulder County?
I think the first thing I always think of, and lately I've been saying more often, is the visibility. You can't see the assets or the gems in your community if you don't see them in your daily life, if you don't interact or you don't have a relationship. And we use diversity and inclusion as demographics, as numbers, but we don't see it as people and the gifts that those people have. And I think that as you connect people and those relationships begin to form, then you have the opportunity to see the value around diversity and inclusion.
I wonder if you would feel comfortable sharing a personal story from your own experience about what you've just talked about the importance of being seen and valued.
I think probably the most recent one, it would be the work on the cultural brokers. So I've been in this community since 1991. And my background before that was to work in business. I worked in accounting and I worked in running a John Deere dealership. When I came here, the way that I got into human services was because I was homesick. I come from El Paso, Texas, a border town that has this amazing mixture of two worlds, not only the US and Mexico, but there's language and just the beauty of creating the opposite of what you would think if I said third world, right? There's this third world that comes up, but it's full of assets. When I came here, I was so homesick for people that spoke Spanish. Then when I went and applied for a job at the Housing Authority in the city of Boulder, they said, oh, by the way, do you speak Spanish? It was a by the way. It wasn't a thought around we need someone who speaks Spanish. And I said, yes, why? And they said, oh, we have a lot of people that speak Spanish in our housing sites. And I'm like, where are they? Please. That connection, that relationship, that understanding, that being bilingual and bicultural enabled me to start not only building relationships, but create a career. But it still has taken me probably 25, 30 years to get any credibility or visibility. And so when I think of the work of the cultural brokers that the Community Foundation helped with, how long we've been doing it and what we've been saying is, let's look at these folks as assets, but we haven't seen them. So that invisibility sometimes is with intent, and sometimes it's because we don't know.
When we think about invisibility and people not being seen, nor counted, nor valued, we have something that comes around only once every 10 years, and that is who's here and who's not here. And all sorts of things flow from that. And I wonder if you could talk about the importance of the upcoming census, in particular with regard to those who might not be seen nor counted.
Well, it's interesting because this will be my second census in this community. So I did the census in 2010, and now I'll do the census in 2020. And I think, once again, the reason that I'm involved is because I'm perceived as a person, a cultural broker that has connections in the communities where institutions may not have connections, and that I can walk into communities. And it's interesting because that reflected in the federal level, who doesn't know our community, the state level, who doesn't know our community at the local level, and then when we get to, that's where you need those local connectors, those local folks that know the community. And so I think what is interesting is that if we had maintained steady relationships with folks, it might not be as difficult. But we have an opportunity to leverage the power of word of mouth. So if you think of every point of connection where someone in the category of vulnerable population, and I don't care for that term because they're really invisible folks, and then we would ask the question of equity. Why are they invisible to us? But if we think of the power of word of mouth, every time you paid your utility bill, every time you went in to redo your paperwork for housing assistance, every time you went to a school and you checked in, someone was saying, hey, you're important to be counted. Everybody counts within Boulder County, and we need to make sure that you understand how to participate in that, and that you feel safe, and that it's important to our community because it means resources, not only for roads, for education, for health, and we need to make sure that all of our community is represented. So I think if we add some human meaning to the collection of data is where we'll be more successful.
What's at stake here for one human being who isn't counted? Like, is there a way to quantify that, or to say?
So for Longmont, we've said it looks like for each household that is not counted, that's 1,500, but I believe for Boulder County it's 2,300. And then it's not just that 1 year. You then have to multiply that times 10. So that 2,300 or that 1,500 that household is not counted, then you multiply that times 10. And quickly those dollars add up. But I think that the other opportunity is to really know who's in our community, so that we can start to see everybody in our community, and we can start to provide resources and programs that are reflective of the needs of our community and those within our community. So there's another opportunity beyond the resources that might come from federal to state to local level, is the opportunity to really understand how diverse we are in our community and what do we need to do to truly be inclusive.
Do you know which resources might be affected by this?
So Medicare, Medicaid, if you look at free and reduced lunch, if you look at student grants, those are services that would be reflected in this, even our roads, transportation. So it impacts us in every single way. And it isn't, the impact isn't just one segment of our community, it is all of us, because we kind of go back to the earlier days with the flood when we started looking into what makes us resilient. Well, this will make us even more resilient by making sure we know who's in our community and that we're providing for all, because if in any way you're impacted and that makes you less resilient, that makes me less resilient, that makes our community less resilient. So that's another aspect that I don't think we've really thought of, because we think of it as collecting numbers and collecting data, and not really looking at the human impact of this.
That makes me think of the Trends report and the question we asked about who are we open to in Boulder County. Mm-hmm. And this is self-reporting, and we say of ourselves we are least open to immigrants, refugees, people of color, seniors. Mm-hmm. What does that mean for what it means to be seen and counted?
Well, I think that most importantly, when we know that that is a community that has a higher potential to not count, it gives us the opportunity to ask the question, why? Part of that is the political environment that we're in, the fear that we've created around immigration, not only at the federal but the state and the local level, and that it is a reality that people are fearful. And if you at any point have anyone in your community that is fearful to be seen, that creates a problem for all of us. And I think the other piece to that is that we get to ask what the Trends has asked for several years now. Why is it that people don't feel that they are seen, valued, and included? So what is it about our community, our systems, that maybe our doors aren't as open as we think they are? And I always give the example of, if I go out into the community and I tell people, we have programs for Latinos, go and knock on this door and you'll be welcomed, and the door's not open, or there's no one behind that door that speaks the language, that has a smile, that knows how to treat them in a culturally competent manner, then we really are not welcoming, and we really aren't accessible or inclusive.
What can one person do to help with this very time-sensitive census count?
I think the most impactful thing that we can do throughout Boulder County is to activate the word of mouth, is for folks to be informed about how you can report to the census, and that it's safe, and reassure folks about that you can go online, you can do it by phone, you can request a paper copy, and then look at their circles of where they can leverage that word of mouth. Are they part of a parent-teacher organization? Are they part of a social club like Rotary? Are they in their church, in their neighborhoods? How can they actively say, hey, just like we would, have you voted? Have you already completed your census? And then if they can also connect with their local complete count committees. Longmont's going to have a complete count committee, has one, Boulder County. And what can we do? Are you part of a employment organization that has employees that maybe either you could ask someone to come and do a presentation to your employees? Are you part of a youth group that we could maybe go and talk to that youth group? So I think activating that word of mouth, the more and more people hear that it's easy, it's safe, and it's confidential, then the more likely we're going to have people say, I'm going to do this, and I know it's important to my community. It means resources, it means visibility, it means representation for me.
In terms of a call to action, what can one person do to help support counting important people in the census?
I think the Community Foundation could help to leverage that word of mouth and that commitment for people to share in the word of mouth, provide resources so that we can enable that. We now are in an age of social media, so the more messages we can get out there, but the more people that we're talking to, and understanding, much like within the trends, why is it important beyond the numbers? Why is it important? It gives us an opportunity to raise visibility of the very same folks that Trends and the Community Foundation has been saying, we are much more diverse. Now we can move on being more inclusive. Might even provide an opportunity to connect with a segment of a community that you've never connected with before.
So that's what one person can do. What do you think we can do collectively together, and in particular, what might the Community Foundation do?
Well, you know, unfortunately, the U.S. Census at the federal level has very little resources. And so we can't hire, in Spanish we would say these portavoces, these people that are out in the community kind of really repeating the message of how easy it is and why it's important, and helping people navigate that system. We might think it's a very easy system, but if you're an older person and maybe you're not very digitally savvy, then that might be a little scary, and you might say, well, I'm not going to do that. If you're a busy mom with kids, you might not feel like you have the time, especially if you don't know it's really very easy. So how do we provide resources that we can have culture brokers or navigators that can help people connect and complete? How do we, and that's something I think the Community Foundation could support, whether that's through funding or setting up a census day where we can have people go on a laptop and you can sit with them and walk through that system, or you could maybe do kind of a call out, whether that's on social media or a blog that says, don't forget, this is how you do it, and this is where you can go for help.
I know there's been conversations about field work, that is, community organizers folks like grounded in particular communities that might not otherwise be counted. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that might be supported by the Community Foundation and others?
I think the call to action or the opportunity, I don't even want to say, but I think a great gift and opportunity is to really have a more complete picture of who's in our community and embrace that, so that after the census we begin to talk about how do we raise visibility and how do we begin to have the gems in our community shine a little bit more and take a little bit more pride in that.
Thank you, Carmen.